What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Timmy Foodie. Hope you're enjoying the channel. Right, today what we're going to be doing is lasagna. Now, I've got some left over. Let me show you. Oh fuck, almost dropped it. This is my ragu that I made the other day. The link will be up to that at the end of the video. This is just our delicious brisket tomato ragu thing. So that part of the lasagna is done. So this is going to be actually quite a quick recipe. What I want to do though, because I've been eating quite a lot of pasta, I do have some lasagna sheets. I'm only going to use a couple of layers of actually pasta in this because I don't want to overdo the pasta in there because I'm just full up for the pasta really. So I'm going to actually use some zucchinis or courgettes, whatever you want to call them, and we're going to cut those lengthways and fry them off. But what I'm going to do first is get the bechamel sauce done. So this I've got out the fridge and I'm just going to leave that to one side just to kind of come up to room temperature. I'll leave it covered over here and that is great. So bechamel, pretty simple really. I need milk. I've got some nice organic full cream milk here. You could put this in another pan and warm it through and infuse some flavours in it, but I can't really be bothered with that, so we don't need to. I mean, I've got enough flavour in this as it is. It's probably going to be too salty to really do anything. So pan on, we need butter, flour, milk and some seasoning. I've got salt and pepper. That's kind of it really. Yeah, I've got cheese in the fridge, but we'll bring that out in a bit and add that in there. With your bechamel sauce, I like to put a bit of cheese in there, but not too much because you can overdo it and then the thing just splits when you cook it in the oven and you really don't want that. So, first up, pan on, medium heat, not too hot. First things first, we're going to put in some butter. Now, quantities for this, I never really figured it out. You just sort of have to wing it and hope for the best. And I know that's not the most useful of instructions for an instructional video, but I don't know whether these are instructional videos or just how I cook and then you just need to kind of follow on as best you can or just watch for pure entertainment purposes really, but I'm not sure I've quite reached pure entertainment purposes just yet. So another butter, that was about 25 grams give or take. Let's put a bit more in because why the hell not? And this is just Lurpak butter because I like Lurpak. It's salted as well. I'm never really that into using unsalted butter. I mean, you can do, but I mean, what's wrong with salt? So, I need a spoon. I've got 2 spoons, right? I only get 1 spoon out. So, here's my flour. That's melting down nicely. Let's just let that all melt. I'm using like a kind of flat based wooden spoon spatula so I can get in the corners just to help with stirring. But I do have, we might get a whisk out in a bit. So that's doing its thing. So I'm going to put in 1.5 tablespoons roughly of flour. And then we're just going to literally stir that around and mix in the butter and the flour together so it all mixes up nicely. Watch out you don't splash. I might put in a little sprinkle more flour, probably good. And then I'm actually going to put in a little bit more salt at this stage. I think putting in salt at this stage is good because this is like the essence, the base essence of the sauce. So we don't want to it to be under. I don't know. I find you get more depth of seasoning if you do it at the beginning. So I'm just cooking that off, and it's like maybe a little bit more. You want it to almost form into like a thickish sort of paste, but not too thick. I'm going to turn that down a touch. And then with this, you don't want it to like burn. You want it to just cook off and brown ever so gently so the flour cooks off. You don't want like a raw flour taste. I probably need a little bit more flour in there. Again, it's a bit of a, I mean, I'm sure there'll be recipes you can find for like quantities if you want, but it's kind of, I'm going to turn that down a bit, because that's, if it's too hot, then bring it off the heat like that, like I've just done. And that's kind of cooking really nicely. And that's just cooked off. So it's like a kind of nutty, kind of light goldeny colour. Then I'm just going to pop in some milk. And I want this to, before I mix it in, I want it to come up to heat. I'm going to put a bit of pepper at this stage as well. I think Australia just took another wicket. This is most displeasing if you're English. So that's come up to heat now, and I'm just going to stir that through. And as you can see, it'll kind of thicken. It's a bit hot. Turn that down a bit. And as you see, it's sort of gone into like quite a thick sort of, oh, it's too high. It's gone into like a thick kind of thing. We're going to just keep stirring that, make sure nothing's sticking. Just keep stirring it until it goes, all mixes together and goes into like a smooth, thick, look, see, it's gone into like a thick kind of thing there. That's good. We'll add a bit more milk. And again, just let it sit there and come up to temperature a bit first before we mix it in. Bit more pepper. That butter can go to the side. Now while that's just coming up to simmer before we mix it in again, you need a good lasagna dish, so depth is key. So that's about 3 inches or so. So the more depth you've got, the more layers you can do in there. So yeah, that's the perfect dish for me. And it's not too big, so it's going to give me like 4 portions. Normally I'd go in a slightly bigger pan and cook a load of it, but I don't really need that much. And I've only got a limited amount of the ragu mixture, so you just need to kind of think about the size of the dish that you're using. It's better to have a bit left over at the end than nothing. So that's just, still I've milk in and I haven't mixed it yet. I'm just letting that milk match the temperature of the stuff we're mixing into, and that way you're going to avoid lumps. Some people say you should mix it straight away with cold milk, but I don't think that's right. I think that the heat of if you're trying to mix two things together that are different temperatures, then they're not going to mix together that well. So we're just going to now, that's probably reached temperature now, so I'm just going to mix this up. There'll be a point when you might need to just start doing it with a whisk. But just gradual stirring like this should do it, and that will just get rid of the lumps eventually that form. But this is the best way I've found to do it, that kind of gives you a good end result. Keep mixing. Yeah, smelling nice. When you do that initial stage with the butter and the flour, you can kind of smell the rawness in it when it's cooking. And once it gets to that really light golden colour, you know that's about right, and you know that the flour's cooked off a bit. But you don't want to go too far with it. I almost went too far with this, but I think it's okay. It needs to be a very light golden. I probably hit a medium golden, but that was just because the pan was a bit too hot. But it's all right. It'll be fine. It's not smelling burnt, so that's the main thing. If it just almost smells a bit like bread, then you know it's about right initially. And then, yeah, so I'm waffling a bit. So keep mixing that. That's looking good. Might grab my whisk just for a bit of extra oomph. And then what you want to do is sort of take this to so that's like nice and smooth with no lumps. That's looking really good. And you want to get the thickness of this eventually. You want it to be not as, almost like a cream thickness, single cream thickness, I'd say, because when we add the cheese, it's going to thicken it back up a bit, and that'll thicken it a touch to almost like, I guess, double cream consistency, and then we're good to use it. And then once this is in, I'll just put it over there to one side on a really low heat, just to kind of bubble away. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So now we can add a bit more milk. A little bit more. And I'm not really mixing, I'm just letting the milk kind of get down through the thicker sauce. And again, just let that come up to temperature gradually before we mix it in. And scrape off some of this stuff off this spoon. Something like that. And then I'm just kind of making sure there's no bits coming up the edge of the pan, which is why something like this, which is more of a flatter edged kind of spoon thing, it makes it a bit easier to kind of scrape stuff around. If you wanted to, you could use one of these like rubbery spatula jobbies, which are really good, which I'll probably use to scoop it all out at the end. It's like a nice sort of rubbery thing, so you get lots of contact on the edge. It's looking good. And that's starting to steam and bubble slightly, so I know I can start mixing that up. I might just get the whisk out now. As it's getting a bit thinner, it will whisk up a lot nicer than with the spoon. So just the whisk in there and keep it moving it around. Yeah, it's smelling good. And that's going into a real silky smooth liquid now. If you can see, it's like super nice and creamy and silky smooth. And then remember, like, I want enough to fill this, to give me a few layers in this dish, so I don't need a huge amount of this liquid, but this can keep for a few days in the fridge easily. And you can turn it into other stuff. So if I've got some left over, we'll figure out something to do with it. You can actually make croquettes with it by putting stuff into this mixture, letting it cool down and solidify, and then forming it into little croquettes and then breadcrumb and deep fry it. And they're super fucking awesome. So we can try that if we've got enough left maybe, but that could be a recipe for another day. So I need a drink. My throat's a bit croaky from all the bushfire smoke. It's been pretty bad in Sydney the last few days, so. Oh. This is pretty good. In terms of thickness, yeah, that's getting there. I might just give that a little bit longer to just do its thing and come up to the simmer, and then while it's doing that, let us get some cheese. Got a bit of Parmesan there, got a plate. I've got some cheddar as well, which I think would be quite nice. I've got some Gouda as well, but I think this is going to be a better thing to use. Just cut through. Ugh. You've got this wax, it's quite tricky. It's probably enough. So that can keep doing its thing. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, that's a bit hot, that's sticking to the bottom, so I just want to turn that down just really gently now. I'm going to add in a touch more milk just to thin it down a touch more. And that can just very slowly just do its thing. Just, yeah, keep an eye on it so it doesn't stick, because if it is too hot it will catch the bottom if you're not careful. Right, that's good. So let's grate some of this Parmesan. Parmesan is really good because it's like got a huge amount of flavour. And then I haven't put in too much salt into that because this is going to take the salt levels up quite a bit once you start putting the cheese in. So literally just a pinch of salt at the start and that should cover you off. Nice bit of Parmesan. And then once you put the cheese in, just sprinkle it through. That's probably about good for that. And then let's just put in a little bit of this cheddar. Again, we don't need too much. I'll do slightly thicker. Probably about a third of this is good. This is quite mature but quite creamy cheddar, so I think it will go quite well with this. But I don't want it to overpower it, so probably that's good, a little handful like that. That's about right, we don't want to go much more than that. I can save some of this because we're going to put that on the top of the lasagna at the end. That's good, we'll put this to one side. Making a mess in the kitchen as always. Just gently let that melt into it a bit and then just whisk that through. And then you should start to see it thicken up as the cheese melts. I'll get that out of the way. Now black pepper in this is awesome, so do a bit at a time and then whisk it in. And you want to just eventually see little flecks of black pepper through it. It's quite a fine grind. Give that a good whisk up. And then I will show you. So can you see the thickness of that now? So it's a bit thicker than double cream, but not far off. So that is, for me, about the right consistency. But if you've gone too thick, just get some more of your milk, splash a little bit more in there, mix it through, and that'll thin it down a touch. So now, we don't want it too thick because when this goes in the oven with the lasagna, it will kind of lose some moisture out of it and it could split. You don't want that to happen, so better to err on the side of safety and go a little bit thinner than you need, and then you should be fine. But that's looking pretty good, and that's probably cheesy enough for me. I mean, you could go more if you're doing a bona fide cheese sauce for veggies or macaroni cheese or something. You could probably go a bit further with the cheese, but again, because you're cooking those things in the oven, you don't really want to go too far with it, because I've done it before and I put in like a really expensive mix of awesome cheese and I put in too much and it split in the oven and it was awful. I mean, it tasted okay, but it lost the creaminess to it and it was all dry and yeah, it was terrible. So, and that was with some real decent cheese, and it was a complete waste of money. But again, these things will happen. You will make mistakes, but you just have to learn from that and figure out A, what went wrong, and then B, how to do it better the next time. So that is the key here. But this is looking pretty damn good. So just a final little mix up just to make sure it's all sorted. And then there's, yeah, awesome white sauce. You can give it a taste, make sure it tastes good. I'm gonna let that just really gently simmer for a bit while I cook off the next stage, which are these zucchinis or courgettes, whatever you want to call them, wherever you are from. Yeah, that's looking good. So that's a nice, slightly thinner than we were, but that's about perfect, I think. Give it a try. And it should, like, you see that? It kind of coats the back of the spoon, and then you can draw your finger over it. It doesn't really blend through, or it doesn't, you know, close that up. Yeah, it could go a bit cheesier, but it's nice. It's subtle, but pretty good. Maybe a bit more black pepper, because I'm a sucker for it. And then I might get a bit of nutmeg, if I can find it, which I never can. So I like to use whole nutmeg like this, and grate it myself. I've got one of these microplane graters. These things are great, but they're super sharp, so be really careful with it. And just a few grates, because it's fresh, it's quite strong, so you don't need to, not fresh, but it's in its whole form. You don't really, it's such a delicious smell. Just a few grates of that, and that's perfect, and we'll just mix that in with the rest of that bit of pepper. And that just gives these, like, it cuts through a bit of the creaminess of the sauce like this. Like, nutmeg's just such a great thing for that. And that's great, smelling cheesy, bit of pepper, bit of nutmeg. And if you wanted to at this point, you could put in some fresh herbs if you wanted to, but for the lasagna, we don't really need that. So we could, if I was making a kind of cheese sauce it was going to go with, you can do like mashed potato, veggies, and have it with ham. And you could put parsley in this sauce and make like a cheesy parsley sauce, and that is delicious. So we might do that at some point as well. But that's basically it. You just make some mashed potato, steam some veggies, and then do this sauce exactly like this, but then right now put in a load of freshly diced parsley, stir it around, and there's your parsley sauce. You don't have to put the cheese part in, but you know, why not? Cheese is good. So that's great. That can just sit there now. I'll probably just, I mean, it's cooked enough, so I can just put a lid on that and put it to one side and just let the residual heat keep that warm while we're doing this step, and then we'll be ready to build up the lasagna. So we'll be right back and do that in a sec. Right, we're back. Sauce is over there, just chilling out. Frying pan's on, just warming through ever so gently. I'm going to turn that up just to a medium heat. It's on a 4 on this thing. So we're just going to cut our zucchinis. Just pay attention to what I'm doing. So what I want to do with these is cut them into strips. Now if you want it to be stable, then get an edge of it and just cut a tiny little shaving off. We can still cook that and then turn it over, and then that's much more sturdy, yeah? And then we're just going to do slices down through about 5 mil thick. Can you kind of see how thick that is? About 5 mil is good. You don't really want to go too much thinner. Just be really careful, line it up, push it through. This one, be a bit careful with because it's at the end. And I don't know how many of these we're going to need, so I'm going to just cook off a batch and see what we're going to need. So there's for the first strip, and then down onto the flat edge. Perfect, just cut this carefully. We'll do one more for the minute. Pop those in there. Cut a little thin bit off there, onto the flat edge, cut through, cut through. Now this, you need to have a knife that's as long as your thing if you're going to do it like this. You can kind of cut through and drag through, but I don't really like that sort of technique for this sort of thing. Yeah, perfect, there we go. That's probably going to be enough. So that was, what was that, 3 courgettes. So we're looking good, heat's good in the pan, little drizzle of olive oil, and then we're going to just with this. Let's flatten these out a sec and just give those a little dousing of salt and pepper on that side. Hear that sizzle? That's about what we want. Just give them a little move around to pick up some of that oil. Nice. And I've got a bit of space either side, so let's do a couple more. And that's going to be good. Again, a little bit of salt and pepper. There's probably enough oil in the pan there, that side. And then with this, you don't really want to, again, this is on a 4 here, so it's very much a sort of medium heat. And we just want to let that do its thing on that side. We're going to just do a little sprinkle of salt on this side for these guys. A little bit of pepper. So that's why I did the other side, so they were face down, so we pre-seasoned those. And then I'll just do a little drizzle more on this top side so that when we flip it, the oil's there. And that's it. We're going to cook that in a little batch. I've got enough there for a second batch, and hopefully that's enough for our little lasagna dish. So let that do its thing for about a minute or two. And then if you want to check to see how it's doing and that you've got the temperature right, turn it over and have a look. You want to turn these once it's started to take colour and get some browner, darker areas, but at the moment we're still a bit away from that. So let's give that 2 minutes and then we'll be back. Right, we're back. It's had about 2 minutes. We're starting to get a little bit of colour on there, but it's not a huge amount. I don't know if you can kind of see. It wants a little bit longer maybe, but just give them a check, and it's not going to hurt to flip them over and give them a bit on the other side, and you can always turn them back over again. Just be nice and careful at this point, because you don't want to, once they start to cook down, they will start to get quite delicate. So that's all right. I'm probably going to turn it up a touch and start getting a bit more colour on that now actually. So this will need a bit longer on these sides. I'll probably turn those too soon, but you know, it's fine. You don't want it to burn or, you know, overcook, so it doesn't hurt to turn them over too soon. And then with these, you might need to start rotating them around, because the heat distribution with these induction pans, I mean, this is a cheaper one, so it's not quite as good. Let's move this over a bit so you can kind of see what's going on. Yeah, see, that's taken on. That's about right. Can you see that? A bit more colour on it. Perfect. So that's what we want. So I'm going to now flip those over back to the other side. See, that one, even though it's been there the same amount of time, it's not taken on quite so much colour. So I'm going to do a bit of a jigsaw Jenga type thing, and we'll just very gently bring these off to slightly cooler part of the pan. I'm going to move those in, move this guy in. This guy can probably go up there. You can kind of come up here, flip this guy. Yeah, that's good. So this is going to take, I don't know, it's probably going to take about 20 minutes in total to do all of this stuff enough for this dish. So just keep doing this in little batches. Once it's cooked, I've got a plate out, we're just going to put it on this plate, and that can actually cool down because we're going to need to handle it. So it's actually good to let it cool down just a touch. And just keep doing this, repeat the process, do what I'm doing, just keep an eye on it. Once it starts to cook a bit one side, shuffle them around, keep an eye on it. Once they both get to this sort of colour, then both sides, then you can pop them out onto this plate. And just keep doing that. Once you've got it all done, then I'll just get all that smashed out now, and then we'll be back and we'll build up the lasagna. Right, we're back. So I've fried these off. They're looking good. That's about perfect. They're just cooling down. I've just brought the bechamel sauce back out just to warm through a touch, to make it a bit more pliable to make our little dish. So I've got my dish out. So now it's just having fun and building it up. So we're going to do it in little layers. I need a little spoon, probably a little drizzly spoon type of thing for my bechamel. So I've just got a little serving spoon there, that should be great. Now I think I want to put a layer of these at the bottom. How you build this up is going to be kind of up to you, but I mean, just a little drizzle of olive oil all around it, and just rub that around all up these sides, because also that's going to help it to not kind of stick so much. And then make sure that's nicely coated all up all sides. That's great. Oh yes, very exciting. So now these probably still be a bit hot, but it's all right. I have heat-proof fingers. So I'm going to do a layer of this at the bottom. Now I did think about doing something where you just like layer it up the sides like that. But then I don't know what's going to happen when you kind of cut through it. I think it might burn the edges of the courgette, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm just sort of packing this in a nice layer across the bottom, kind of however we can do it. Don't worry if there's, oh, some of those are fucking hot. Don't worry if there's a bit of overlap, it's all good. Now these will be quite delicate, so just be careful when you're getting them out. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. I've got a little chunk, I might just put that in there. So there's a base layer. Oh, I don't need that one. Now it's the decision of what do you do next. I'm going to put some of this ragu. So this has been out the fridge, so it's not quite so stone cold, so it's a little bit easier to kind of spread around. It would be a bit easier if this was slightly warm, but it's okay. I only want a thin layer of this, so I might pull out the chunks of pumpkin for the minute, or just smush those up. Maybe we'll just smush those up. Yeah, that's a good idea. Smush those little fuckers up. Okay. I'm just using my fingers, fuck it. They're clean, and it's me eating it, so. A little touch more. Now remember, I'm limited with how much I've got of this, so I want to be a bit careful with my layering. But I think that's good. Smush that one up into there. Maybe that one as well. So there's my first layer. So that's my courgettes and my ragu mixture. I think what we'll do next, it's always hard to know which order you're supposed to do this in, but you know, we'll figure it out. Now the other thing about a good lasagna dish is that you preferably want nice sharp edges in terms of the corners and not too many curves, because it gets to be a bit of a pain in the arse to actually build the thing, and then you've got to start, oh bollocks, cracking corners into things, and like see the width isn't quite right, but you can kind of break it up a bit, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to just shorten that a touch. This is like an egg based lasagna sheet, and I mean I'm overlapping a bit, but you know, whatever. And then I need like it's probably not going to work. Oh my god, it did work. That's amazing. Crack some of the corners off, maybe shorten it a touch, chuck it in, fill in some edges. I mean, once it's all in, you're not really going to notice. That's pretty sweet. And then get some of our bechamel. I'm gonna, fucking beeps, so annoying. Bechamel, drizzle that all through. Pretty good, just a nice thin layer, that's kind of nice. Perfect. Now, the other thing is, do not overfill this thing, because it will overflow, but it's almost inevitable that I'm going to overfill it, so there is a way around solving the impending doom of it overflowing, so we'll get to that though. So we're just laying these nice and gently on top of that sauce. You see what's going on? Yeah. Very nice. And I'll put these this way. And this is just like a little jigsaw thing you're doing now. Oh fuck, they're a bit slippy. There we go, that's pretty good. I may as well just put the rest of these over here really, as I've only got a few left, so that's good. So there's kind of 2 layers of zucchini in there. Now, what I could do is another layer of pasta. Hands a rinse. I wonder if doing it that way is going to be easier. I think this way is the best, isn't it? See, that middle one fits nicely, that's great. We've kind of got... oh, yes, that works so well. Right, now, this pasta doesn't crack very nicely. I'm just trying to, see, I'm trying to do the corners there and then just get a bit of the end off, just shorten it. Oh, perfect. Crack that off. If you're trying to crack it, just support the edge with one thumb and just crack the bit off that you're trying to shape the curve. And that, you know, I've got to shorten it a touch. Now that's exactly what I said not to do. Perfect. So I'm tempted to just sort of sandwich that in. So I could have had more zucchini and done another layer of zucchini here, but I just want a thin layer of this now, just on top of the pasta. And I'm going to then mix this with a layer of the final layer of the ragu. And then we want enough bechamel to cover the top. You want quite a thick layer of bechamel on the top. So that's good. So that's 2 layers of pasta, which is about right, I think. I mean, I could do, you know, a little double thing here if I wanted to, but, you know. I'm going to actually put this in with my hands because I want this to just really gently sit on top and just form a nice thin layer. And then I'm going to just make sure I just smush up the pumpkin so there's no big chunks. And this is going to form this kind of awesome ragu-y, bechamel-y, just awesome combination, which is ace. Just really gently smash that in. Yes. Don't worry if there's little gaps and stuff, it's fine. Oh yes, I think we might have room for one more layer of pasta, actually. So I think we'll do that. I'm going to just put the rest of this in. Just fill this over any little gaps that you see in the sauce there. Delicious. Now this is the point where I normally forgotten to do something vital, but I think we're good. Yeah, that's nice. Just sort of pat that down a touch, get that all nicely in. And yeah, I think we've got room for one more layer of pasta and then we'll do sauce on top. And that is going to be perfect. Rinse the hands. I always like to have like some hot soapy water in the sink because it makes this stage a lot easier. Beautiful. So there is that. I might just tidy up. There's a bit of a mess around the edges. Try and keep that clean because when that goes in the oven, that's going to burn onto the Pyrex dish, which it's not a big problem. You can clean it, but it just saves a bit of hassle. So let us do one final layer of pasta, and this is definitely going to be overfilled, but you know, whatever. Oh God. That's not very good. I'm not an engineer. That's probably going to be about right, yeah. Yeah, so you don't want to waste stuff. I mean, I'll put this back in the box, what I don't use. Yeah, nice. See, that's the problem when you've got curved edges to these dishes, then it makes doing this very difficult. If they can make lasagna sheets with curved edges, it makes things a lot fucking easier. But if I made the lasagna sheets myself and made it fresh, this would make the process much easier. But I mean, you could put a few little bits in the gaps and, you know, stuff like that if you want to, but, you know, we're good. So now, final stage. That's looking good. Just push that down a touch. Looking good. And then we've got our final amount. I think I've miraculously, I always manage to do this. I've somehow made the exact right amount, I think. And we're just going to drizzle this remainder on top. You can kind of just pour this on now. Just all around, and it should just settle in nicely. Give that a scrape. Perfect, and then just give that a very gentle. Get this sealed up on all sides so that it's covering any of the sauce. And then we're going to put enough cheese on it so that kind of gratinates on top and it will almost help seal it all in. That is looking pretty fab. Oh yes, I think that's good. And you can just like get the rest of the sauce off there with your fingers if you want. I mean, whatever. And then give it a taste. And again, just tidy up any splashes off the edges. That's good. That's perfect. And now we're going to do a little mix. So this is just a mix of Parmesan and that cheddar. I might need to grate some more Parmesan, but we'll see how we go. I'm just going to kind of just sprinkle that across. And don't worry, some of the cheddar's sort of clumped up because it's warmed up a bit since I grated it, but that's okay. You'll get little pockets of cheesier sections. Pretty nice. And I'm going to get a little bit more Parmesan on that, I think, because I have some decent stuff in here. So perfect. Where's my little... There. This microplane thing's awesome for Parmesan. Look at that, that's good. So we're just going to grate that all over the top. So you want it to melt across everything and kind of gratinate and do its thing. Perfect. So let's just pat that down into it. And that is looking pretty nice. Just get rid of any flakes of Parmesan off the top of the thing. Just save yourself a bit of hassle when you're cooking it. Perfect. And then if you want to do a couple more grates of nutmeg or something, then you can, but I'm pretty happy with that. So there is our delicious, I was going to tip it up to show you, but then I was going to pour it all over myself. So yeah, so there's our awesome lasagna. That can just chill out now. You can cover it, put it in the fridge, leave it for a day, cook it at a dinner party the next day, whatever. Or, you know, do this in the morning and get it out in the evening or afternoon and pop it in the oven. It's probably going to take about 40 minutes to an hour in the oven, I guess. Depends how, if it's from the fridge, it's going to take longer to cook because obviously it's going to be colder inside. But if you're going to do it fresh like this and just get it in there, which I might do, it's, you know, getting later in the day. So in the oven, let's say about 180 degrees centigrade in a fan oven. You don't want to go too much hotter than that because the cheese will eventually do its thing. You don't want it to burn and you want it to all cook through nicely and the pasta to cook and stuff. So, so yeah, 180, give it 45 minutes, give it a check. And once it's looking all nice and golden on top and it's all bubbling away, which because this is Pyrex, you can kind of see inside it, then that's going to be ready. And then we'll get to our next stage. Now, hell if I turn the oven on, wouldn't it? Fucking hell. The thing to do, because I know this is going to overflow, because it's all going to expand and stuff, because pasta expands, remember everybody, always put this in an oven baking dish or tray or something like that, so that if it does overflow, it just fills into that and it doesn't go into your oven. That way, it just saves making any sort of mess in the oven, because it's inevitable it's going to overflow. If you make a lasagna and it doesn't overflow, you haven't tried hard enough. That's my theory. So, yeah. So there we go. Let's pop that in the oven, give it an hour or so, and then we'll come back and we'll get to the next step, which is basically just serving it. I'm going to make a little mixed salad with it, which is going to be tasty, just super simple. But I might take you through how I do my vinaigrette. But I mean, it's pretty basic. So the main thing to do is when you cook it and it's ready, get it out of the oven and leave it for about half an hour or so, just to, A, it's going to be really, really hot. I mean, it's going to be ridiculously hot, so you're not going to be able to eat it straight away anyway. And B, if you let it cool down a touch, it all sorts of solidifies a touch. And then when you cut it, it doesn't all spill out everywhere. It will stay together. So yeah, so that's a really good tip. Just always let it rest for about half hour, 40 minutes, and it will hold its temperature. You can put a lid on it or foil or something just to keep it cool. Keep it warm. Yeah, so that's a great little tip. So what I'll probably do is get it cooked and then let it rest, and then we'll get to serving it up with my salad. So yeah, we'll be right back with that. Okay, we're back. So this is a lasagna, looking awesome, beautiful, all cooked nicely, nice bit of gratination on the top. So that's been out of the oven about half hour or so, just to cool down a bit. It was in the oven about an hour in the end, on about 170 to 180, looking really good. That's about as kind of golden as you want it on the top. You just have to keep an eye on it, because you don't want it to burn, so you just have to be careful of that. And like I said, once it's out of the oven, give it about half an hour. It just cools down just a touch, so that when we chop it, it's not gonna ooze everywhere. So I'm just gonna knock up a quick little side salad that I want with this. And I'm just literally gonna do some cos lettuce. So I've washed that, spun it, put it in the fridge, and we're gonna use a bit of that. So this is just going to be my little vinaigrette that I'm going to do. So vinaigrette, it's super simple. It's just a 3-to-1. Just remember the 3-to-1 ratio. 3 oil to 1 like vinegar, or the acid part. So whether that's lemon juice or apple cider vinegar, or I'm using balsamic vinegar. So just remember the 3-to-1, and then you can add a few little extra bits to it, which we're going to do. So I've just got a spoon here. I'm just going to pour into the spoon. Once it hits the top, that's 1, 2, 3, perfect. So there's that. I've got some decent balsamic vinegar here. We're going to do just under 1 of these, because I'm going to use some of this caramelized balsamic. So just under 1 there. That's my balsamic, very nice. Then I'm just going to do a little drizzle of this caramelized fig and balsamic, just for a tiny bit of sweetness. So just a drizzle of that. That should bring it up to that 3-to-1. I'm going to put in a little bit of mustard, because I like mustard in my vinaigrette, and I'm just using this American mustard, but you can use whatever mustard you like the look of. Just a little bit of that. Then we're going to just do a pinch of salt, a little touch more, and a few grinds of pepper. Now you can add whatever you want. You could add honey, mustard, citrus, whatever you want really. As long as you remember that 3-to-1 as your main rule, then that's, it's going to be perfect. Now I really should be using a whisk here to get this to emulsify properly. So here's the whisk, and then we're just gonna, you'll see what happens in this. It starts to thicken and emulsify. And when I say emulsify, it all just forms together into this beautiful thick dressing, and that's how you know if you've got the 3-to-1 ratio correct, because it will go all nice and thick and emulsified together. Oh, I got too high. It'll go all thick and emulsified together like that. So that's perfect. So we're just going to now dress the salad. Actually, I think this could have a touch more vinegar. So it hasn't quite emulsified as I want it to. Yeah, there we go. See, that's when, okay. If you notice it's a bit split and there's little oil kind of dots in it, then you need more vinegar. And then that's much better. That's like super thick and smooth kind of vinaigrette. So that's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dress the salad. So I've got a nice big bowl. I'm just going to drizzle this all around the outside of the bowl and just kind of smear it around the bowl like this. You don't need too much. That's about right. That'll keep in the fridge for a few days, no worries. And then get some of your salad, chuck it in the bowl. Just enough for me today, that's good. Put that back in the fridge, if you want to keep that cool. And then just get like a fork and a spoon and then just toss it in, because it's all around the edges of this bowl, just kind of tossing it through this bowl, just nicely coat it. A real light kind of coating over the lettuce. I'll probably put a touch too much dressing in there, but I think that's good. And then you just get really nicely dressed lettuce. Nice and crunchy, nice and chilled. Perfect. So, let's do this. Get a knife, and we're just gonna cut around the edge. It should just come off pretty easily because you remember we rubbed it in oil, and I've got no burnt crusty bits on the top or anything because we cleaned that off, so it just saves washing up. So that's just all around the edge. That is perfect. And then I'm just going to put this into quarters, just cut down nicely. I think that's pretty good. I may as well portion this one off as well. And if you were to do this just as it's out the oven, it will all kind of, it'll be a lot actually harder to cut. So once it's solidified a bit, it's a lot easier to cut. And hopefully that's gone through all the bits of zucchini, which should be soft enough now. It's looking good. So now we need some sort of awesome spatula. Oh, we've got a bit of mess here. Okay, let's get our plate. Actually, let's move this side. And we'll get a nice bit that looks good on top. I think this one's looking pretty good. And then just slide it under. Super careful, bring it out. And then slide her off the thing. It's looking pretty good. Delicious. And we haven't really lost too much stuff either, so that can go over here and just chill out now, cool down. And then we'll just cover that and put it in the fridge, and that's going to last a few days. If you wanted to, once it's cooled down, get it out the fridge, portion it out, wrap it in cling film or whatever, and then you can freeze those in individual portions. Then just get those out in the morning, and they'll be defrosted by the time you finish up work and get home. You can just whack that in the oven, reheat it, and perfect. So that's looking pretty good. Let's just dress that with a little nice bit of our dressed salad. Just one side. And I just really like the cold, light crunchiness of the salad with the nice, warm, kind of soft and gooey lasagna. This is great with some tomato salad as well. But I don't have any tomatoes, so this is going to have to do. And there we go, perfect. Nice little lasagna with our brisket ragu. Super delicious, healthy little salad on the side there. And yeah, there we go, brilliant little lasagna. And if you've got like the brisket ragu or bolognese left over, then the only real faff is making the bechamel sauce really, and then doing the courgettes if you want to do that, but you don't have to. And yeah, there we go. Cheers, guys. Look at that awesome, sexy photo. Cheers for tuning in. Head over to @TimmyFoodie or @Timmy_foodie, sorry, on Instagram. Go to timmyfoodie.com for more recipes, and hit me up with a subscribe and a like and a share. That would be muchly appreciated, and we'll be back in a few days with the next recipe. I've got to finish some of these leftovers now, so I don't know whether I'll do a video for a few days or not, but we're back into the work weeks soon, so I'll be cooking some nice quick simple recipes for during the week. So yeah, check back again soon. Cheers guys.